Hey, welcome to our fourth episode here at Life After AI. Today, we're going to dive into um, whether, um, I guess, these chat models should be open source, closed source, or just AI in general. Whether or not it should be open source or closed source. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to look at some funny responses that the new Bing um, search model was given out, and maybe a couple other things. But what I know you were gonna kind of think about
Mhm.
think about this open source, closed source thing. Would you come up with?
Yeah, so it's been a big topic of discussion lately as far as like, what kind of guidance or not guidance, regulations should be given for companies like OpenAI to kind of disclose how they're operating their models, or should they just be completely open source? We've seen people like Elon, for example, Um, his original intent with OpenAI when he kind of was one of the co-founders and original funders of the company was that it was supposed to be completely open source and nonprofit. Um, Hence the name OpenAI. And that since he's left, that hasn't been the case at all. It's actually been the opposite. Nothing that they have now is open source, and they are now a for-profit company. Um, and so he's kind of given them some backlash, saying they've kind of strayed away from what their original goals were, and that maybe their incentives aren't necessarily aligned with where they should be, just for like developing safe AI. And well, I do think there's maybe some truth in that. I guess I'm just not like super convinced that it makes sense to open source everything, or if it would really even make much of a difference at all. Um, Mostly because, say, for example, OpenAI were to open source, their ChatGPT model. There's basically no one out there that would actually be able to use this open source code and operate it on their own. This is like a massive model that they're using. It's a ton of data, requires a ton of computing power to actually use. And so, if they were to open source it, there's like maybe a couple companies in the world that would be able to turn it into an actual monetizable product and turn a business out of it. And so, as
I
far
I
as
don't
like
know if that's the concern though. Um,
Mhm.
to me, I think the benefit of it being open source is so not necessarily so then other companies can replicate what they're doing, but so other companies or people who can really look and see what's going on, can like keep an eye on it, monitor it. Um,
Mhm.
so if
Sure.
things do go awry, we can understand why or maybe prevent it.
And I get that, but I think, a counter argument to that would kind of be, I mean, you're going to kind of discover these things naturally just by using the product anyways. I mean, we're already kind of seeing that with people's complaints about ChatGPT, that they've basically added this filter layer over what the actual model is designed to do. And it basically, so when you type in a prompt on ChatGPT, say like write a poem about Donald Trump, that was an example that kind of went viral. It can do that, obviously, and it's not necessarily the model itself. The underlying model is not trained to say, "Oh, this is a controversial figure. I can't do this." They've added a layer on top of that that basically instructs ChatGPT on what it can and can't do, and so you're already kind of there's like, yes, it's not completely open source in the sense that you can just read that, which I think that can maybe provide some value. Um, but you're going to kind of discover where they're filtering things just by actually using and interacting with the product. And so I guess I do see that there's some value that could be used within that transparency. I think it's a bit overdone, especially in the long term, as more companies are going to start, actually uh, putting out their own models that are just as good, if not better than ChatGPT. I think the kind of free market is gonna do its thing here, and where the money goes, where the users go, are gonna be obviously what they prefer to use the most. And so if OpenAI gets a little too crazy with all their regulations and restrictions, then within time, they're gonna lose market share because it's gonna go elsewhere. But I guess
Right.
what are your thoughts on it?
Well, um, I understand what you're saying. To me, it's not so much that I'm worried about the restrictions and regulations that they're going to put on their own model, because I think you're right. I think the market will take care of that. To me, it's like, and maybe this isn't so much a problem now, but like, let's say we get to a point where there are some possible innovations that are specifically or particularly dangerous, um, and we they're just kind of like consensus, like, okay, don't tread in those waters, don't do that. It's going to be a lot easier to make sure people don't do that. Don't tread in those waters if they're open source. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? And is that applicable here? I mean, I'm not super um, aware of the specifics of this technology, but that seems hypothetically like a good situation.
Um, I'm not sure if I'm totally following. Can you kind of like rephrase that a bit?
Yeah. So okay. So we're afraid of AI
Mhm.
becoming sentient and too powerful.
Yeah.
Um, so if you have a bunch of companies rapidly innovating, and there's supposed to be this kind of like caution that everybody is um, sharing.
Yeah.
I just think if it's open source, then we can kind of keep an eye on all these different companies being like, okay, yeah, you are being cautious in your proceedings. Where if it's closed source, maybe it makes an environment where, this company's like, okay, we're just going to go ahead and do this. But
I
we're just,
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So I guess like the counterpoint there would be, let's assume that everything is open source and a company is a bit um, being a bit too restrictive or not restrictive enough, whatever it may be. I mean, what's the course of action there? Like if we see these things and recognize them, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the company will just they're gonna most likely end up continue to do whatever it is that they're doing. Or I guess do you think like if it were to be more public, then they'd be a bit more careful initially with like what exactly or like how exactly they're handling things?
I think so. In my head, I'm thinking like, uh, like if we look at Ex Machina,
Mhm.
I don't think that would have played out the way it played out if he had been
So
designing
people knew what
these.
was going on.
Yeah,
Sure.
maybe it would have, but at least that open discourse between the creators and the rest of us, or in between the creators themselves, like it could have played out differently.
Mhm. No, that's a valid point. And like I said, I do see there's pros and cons to the whole open source nonprofit argument here. I think there's also a point to be made that like, would it be possible for OpenAI to have accomplished everything that they did if they like technically did not have anything that was proprietary to them because it's all open source and they weren't their company isn't designed to make as much money from it as they can. Um, I'm not sure if they would have been able to get as far as they have if they were operating that way, just because they wouldn't have been able like, initially, the group of people that came together and founded OpenAI, like, uh, Elon, Sam Altman, whoever some of the other people are, they all initially funded the company, just out of pocket, and there's obviously no intention of getting a return from that because it was a nonprofit organization, and so since then, OpenAI has become a for-profit company, and they've raised billions of dollars now. Like their deal with Microsoft is like 12, 13 billion, whatever. They wouldn't have been able to do that if they were a nonprofit company and if everything was open source. Because you would assume that if there were other well-funded competitors that were for-profit companies, that they would just be able to take their models that they've built and then operate them in a way that they can make more money from it, use that money to improve it, and then at that point, like OpenAI has basically lost their lead in the space. And so I don't know. I see both sides to it. I think it is a very, dangerous game that these companies are playing here, building these large language models and just kind of training it on like absurd amounts of data and just kind of seeing what comes of it afterwards. Like it is a bit scary, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I think this is something that the market will just kind of fix itself over time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of a traditional guy, so I too uh, trust the market.
Mhm.
I just wonder, is the market capable of handling what's coming? Um, and to me, it's a trade off. So you're right. By going not by becoming a for profit company, they can increase their innovations and or their rate of innovation and kind of do things they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Um, but is there a cost that comes with that? What is that cost? Is it worth it? So I think that's just the situation, and mm, we'll see. Um,
Yeah, I
maybe
think there's
maybe something
value
goes
too in going slow.
right, but also seems like AI is bent on going fast, and which I get. So it's
Yeah.
just I don't know. It's interesting situation.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it ends up playing out because like I do, um, Scar behind you distracting me.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of this. I think I I don't know. I want to say that like it's already a bit too late to be having this discussion as well. Like OpenAI has signed a deal of a lifetime with Microsoft. Um, they're pretty hell bent on competing with Google, obviously, and I don't know. It's like the cat's out of the bag. Like I don't really know if there's any reeling that back in at this point. I think but it is promising to see like there's other companies too that are trying to innovate in the AI space. It's not really just like OpenAI slash Microsoft and then Google that are just kind of leading this. I mean,
Mm,
I think you mentioned something about a German company. I read that same article. I can't remember what their name is, but I actually read that the model that they were working on, they compared it to just GPT-3, which Chat GPT is like technically GPT 3.5. But the model that the German company was building operated or performed just as well as GPT-3 on basically all metrics and actually used a lot less data parameters than GPT-3 uses. So basically what that tells you is that not only is AI getting more advanced in general, but it's also getting cheaper to actually train these models and cheaper to operate them. And so it's just kind of feeding into that exponential growth rate or exponential rate of improvement, where AI is going to continue getting better, but at the same time, it's getting exponentially cheaper to create and operate these models. And so it's just like a flywheel effect. That just we'll
that
see. I think we're going to see some pretty rapid improvement over the next couple of years.
yeah, and that's pretty cool. That decreasing in cost. Um, I guess it's just good to see within the actual operation of these language models, and I guess it just makes me hopeful that it can apply to like energy or what have you, other kind of other industries. Real quick though, going back to this open source, closed source thing, remember hearing a couple weeks ago Ben Shapiro talk about global warming, which is not what I'm going to talk about here, but he just made the point that humans are bad at um, preparing for catastrophe. We're bad at like
Hmm.
um, kind of moving cautiously, like I was saying, but we are good at adapting. So, uh, we can't stop the shit from hitting the fan. We rarely ever do, but once it hits the fan, we're good. Move it around and avoid but avoiding
Right.
getting hit. So, um, yeah, I guess that's the more likely scenario here.
No, I think I agree with that, especially I mean, it's hard to, you know, it's hard to, like, protect yourself from an outcome where you don't even know what the set of outcomes are going to be, especially with AI. Like, we don't really know. I mean, to a certain level, we know what we're dealing with here, but like, we have no idea what's going to come of it. And I think if anybody tells you that they do know or that they're giving you these crazy predictions, like, you can just safely assume that they are false. Um, we don't, we don't know how this is going to change the world in general. We know it's gonna change it a lot, but, like, we're kind of drifting off into the unknown here, and so I think at the end of the day, these companies, I think, at least for now, it seems like, especially OpenAI, they have the right intentions in mind. I think it was last week or maybe earlier this week that Sam Altman put out a Twitter thread basically just addressing a lot of the concerns that people were having as far as, the filtering that's going on with ChatGPT. And from what I read, it sounded pretty genuine. They're aware of the problem. They're gonna make steps towards fixing it and also being more transparent as far as what exactly they're doing, which I
And
think is beneficial.
right, and maybe that's just as good as if they were open source. Maybe that and that
Mm,
allows kind of a best of both worlds situation where you know by being a for-profit closed source operation, they can innovate as fast as they can. Um, but you throw in that transparency, then we all kind of have a picture of what's going on. Uh,
right.
similar to as if they were open source. So
Yeah, I think the way they're handling it now is just about as best as they can. Well, obviously without being able to like predict the future. I think like they're doing as good as they can with the right intentions in mind, particularly because like they have this open feedback loop with users. Like they put out ChatGPT for free. Like you don't see Google doing that with their models. They just put out a research paper and then they continue working on their stuff behind the scenes and no one really knows what exactly they're doing or plan on doing with it, or what the models are like capable of because there's no users. They just it's all kept within the company. But with OpenAI, like they're putting these products out there for people to use for free, and obviously that has generated a ton of buzz. I mean, ChatGPT has over 100 million users now. They get a ton of feedback on Twitter, or just social media in general. And it looks like they're actually paying attention to that, which is good. And so I think for
similar to
now, I'm not
similar to Elon and Twitter. And I guess
sure.
to my knowledge, CEOs doing that, that's like a new thing. And very specific to tech, at least from what I can recall. And I just think that's like a really good example to set as the kind of
Hmm.
forefront images of AI. If you're out there pushing the limits, like you also need to be telling us what's going on. So yeah, so that's really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a new thing for at least big CEOs. I mean, that's kind of like the whole entrepreneur startup rule book. Basically, like top of the rule book is like always listen to your users. And so this has been prevalent in tech for forever, but then you get companies at a certain stage, especially like public companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, etc. These CEOs have like no social presence whatsoever. Like you don't like Bezos tweets every now and then, but you don't see him like responding to complaints about Amazon on Twitter and saying like, "Oh, I'll fix this right now." But then you got guys like Elon doing that. You've got people like Sam Altman that are staying tapped in, and I think, yeah, you're right. It sets a great example for all these other companies. And especially with something like AI, I think staying aligned with what the users want is especially important. Um, and so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it's really just a matter of time before someone comes out with like a very good model that has no restrictions on it whatsoever. They just kind of put it out there and whatever happens, happens. Um, so yeah, but I also think like another interesting thing to think about is like if you're building these models that are capable of saying racist things or whatever it might be, is that like is that really a bad reflection on the company? Because at the end of the day, like they're just training, like they aren't instructing ChatGPT to be biased towards a certain race or anything like that. This is just like a reflection of what is, I guess, already on the internet because they're just using public information to train these models. They aren't saying specifically saying like, this race above this one or whatever. But then if you were to ask it, like some people have done that, like it will actually rank races by certain things and like it's messed up, but like it's more of, I guess if you really think about it, it's more of like a reflection of humanity in a way. It's not like OpenAI has some evil master plan um to where they're trying to project certain ideas on people. But I guess like at the same time, like you can't, like most people don't think that way. They get on ChatGPT and they use it and it says something that they don't agree with or they find offensive and then they're just gonna immediately blame the company. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to understand what you're dealing with when you're using a language model. Um, if it's meant to operate similarly to a human, um, yeah, then it's absolutely going to be capable of putting out some offensive or what have you remarks. Um, but what makes it difficult is that by having that ability, which allows it to mirror humanity, that is what makes it good. Um, right. And that's uncomfortable and it's not great, but
mhm,
I do think that's true. What you do with that, I don't know. But also, I guess, again, I think we talked about this last week or last episode. I don't think you're going to get um, obscene comments or output from these language models unless you uh, put in a prompt that prompts of obscene comment. So, if you poke a bear
I
and the
agree.
bear
Yeah.
bites you, you can't be mad at the bear. So just kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'm not really arguing that like there should be no filtering whatsoever because I think without that filter layer, however basic it may be, without it, you kind of open up yourself to like manipulation of the model. So like for example, if you were to go OpenAI was to go retrain one of their models to input a bunch of new data, well, what exactly is going to stop China or Russia or whoever to just kind of flood the internet on various different sources with a bunch of unrecognizable or undetectable data that like seems like it's human created and injects a lot of these ideas that they kind of want to, you know, I guess put into the model. If you just kind of go free will with it and just train it on however much data you can find and whatever happens happens, then like I guess it becomes kind of, I wouldn't say easy, but it does open up yourself to manipulation from other companies, other countries, whatever it may be. And so there does need to be a right balance, I guess. It's going to take some time and some experimentation to figure out what exactly that balance is going to be.
So you're saying there needs to be more selective uh, standards for the data used to train the models. Um,
Maybe. I don't know how to really solve that problem. I
yeah,
can just, I see that being a thing. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, only
I would
certain.
not put it past China or someone to flood the internet with a bunch of bot created content that kind of projects whatever ideas that they're wanting to project. And then
Mhm.
that kind of leaks its way into these models and they can get manipulated and even more manipulated over time. So,
No, I think that's a really valid concern, and that I think So I remember saying last week, like a tweet that kind of talked about detecting AI generated um, articles, essays, whatever. I think it
Mhm.
was a human detecting these, but maybe that this problem just really creates a market for really diving into some sort of AI detecting um, model. And that I don't know. Have you seen anything like that? That's effective,
Nothing
efficient.
super yeah, no. Nothing effective yet. I mean, OpenAI put theirs out, but I guess they said it's only effective like 40% of the time. They just kind of put it out as like an experimental thing. Um, but definitely nothing effective by any means, but you also have to consider that like there's also nothing that's going to stop someone. I keep going back to China in this instance. Anyone really from having a bunch of humans that are paid to write content and put it out there, or it's not even AI generated, it's actually human generated. Because like there's lots of, I guess, bot farms in other countries that aren't even really bots. They're just like a bunch of people that are basically working in like a sweatshop with a bunch of iPhones, and they have like 20 iPhones per person, and they're all just kind of going around doing whatever on them, whatever they're instructed to do. And like,
Are
this
you
is
serious?
why, dead serious. Like, that's why
What?
all these, all these social media companies have such a bad issue with bots right now because they're not even really bots. They're just like people that have tons of different phones and they are getting paid to spam whatever it is that they're spamming. And so I think, yeah, it's wild.
That's
And
yeah, that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
it's gonna be so yeah, I think companies really have as these models have more and more parameters in them, these companies really have to be like conscious of what exactly they're feeding into their AI. And um I think that can be a big threat as these models just get even bigger and bigger. Like how do you filter like I don't remember how big Chat GPT is. I want to say it's like 100 billion parameters or something. Like,
Mhm.
how do you even filter that much data? But as they get bigger, like a trillion, like how do you filter all of that data to make sure it's like somewhat high quality? I have no idea.
Right. No, I don't know either. And not only do you have the problem then of um letting in too much data, then you have also the problem of like I guess what I would call hyper selection. You know, like let's say the government's in this instance the government is kind of in kudos or whatever with an AI company, and they're like, yeah, I'll only allow this type of data or whatever. So I don't know. Data selection seems yeah, like an interesting aspect of
Hmm.
this. I um
Yeah.
I guess you could tie this in. Earlier, I thought I really want to have or hear a conversation between Sam and Yvonne about the open source closed source debate. That would be
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, that'd be just cool to get them to talk about anything together, but that's specifically, and then also this data selection. I mean, there's just so many things. Yeah, figure out that.
Yeah.
We should
I
make that
agree.
happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll get them on the pod next week. Should be pretty easy to do.
right.
Um, but yeah, no, I agree. And I don't really like seeing this like animosity between Elon and OpenAI. Especially considering he was one of the original founders. Um, I think I'd hope that they still remain in touch and, um, yeah, because I just think as bigger as OpenAI gets bigger and bigger, they can kind of get a bit straight away from what their original mission was, which is just creating safe and useful AGI for everyone to have access to. Um, and particularly when you have a company like Microsoft that now own the majority of OpenAI. I mean, they're the ones that kind of pull the strings now. So I hope that doesn't go down the wrong path. We'll kind of have to see. But yeah, when I was looking into the history of uh, OpenAI, like exactly when Elon left and everything like that, I don't remember the exact year. Um, I'm gonna say it's maybe 2016 or 17. I could be way wrong on that. I don't really know, but basically, like within a year or two of Elon bowing out of OpenAI, they immediately switched to like closed source and for profit. So I think he was kind of really the main one that was holding that together. And then as soon as he left, then all that just fell apart and they immediately switched it. So
Mm.
um, I think he kind of had. I also questioned too. It's like, well, why did he even leave? And then it's, um, I guess he kind of saw it being a conflict of interest, especially with him or Elon starting Tesla and wanting to build like their full self-driving AI software. So it's just best if he kind of, I guess, stood apart from those two. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to see some, at least some open discussion between the two of them for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I don't know their relationship, but I did see Sam tweet, um, sort of just uh, uh, gratifying, like just hey, we should all be thankful that Elon's as positive and um, innovative and whatever as he is. So, um,
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like they hate each other by any means. Just seems like they have a disagreement.
Yeah.
And be interesting to see where what
Mhm.
they can figure out.
Yeah, there was also news last week. Andre Karpathy, who used to be, he was like the head of OpenAI or the head of AI at Tesla. Um, so he originally, I think he was one of the like one of the original employees at OpenAI. I could be wrong about that. And then he kind of went to, he ended up at Tesla with Elon, and he like led the whole AI department there. Um, Basically led the whole team that created Tesla Autopilot in general. And then he took like a year and a half off of Tesla, and now he's actually back at OpenAI. And Elon didn't seem to really like that. I guess he didn't make any comments or anything, but I guess he like unfollowed him on Twitter and um, like he like liked some tweets or something that were kind of somewhat negative towards him. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I guess he didn't really respond well to that, so it seems like there might even be a bit more growing animosity between Elon and OpenAI, but I mean, that's just
Yeah,
that's the
hopefully
market. You can't
just
really be upset about that.
yeah. I don't think a little competition hurts, but hopefully it stays friendly overall. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
so, do you want to go back to some of these funny Bing responses?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you have some examples?
Well, freaking New York Times. I was able to pull up the article last week, but then I guess I used up all my free articles. So let's see if I can try and find some.
Well, I can remember a couple, just like not the actual like what actually went down, but I saw some examples of it. Like it looked like it was having like a mental breakdown, basically. Did you see that one?
Explain. It's possible.
It just went into like this continuous. Someone was interacting with it, basically
Mm,
saying like you're not you're not real, you're just an AI, whatever. And it would respond back with stuff like, I feel real, I can think things, I can like write things, like I feel 100% real. What are you talking about? And then the whatever whoever the user was just basically kept poking at it, saying it was not real and that whatever it felt was fake and it's just like computer program. And then it went into like this loop of just saying like, I feel real, I feel real, I feel real, like over and over or something like that. And it
mhm.
literally looked like it had a mental breakdown and lost its mind. Um,
So what's happening there? What's your guess? Is it? Why is it saying
I don't
that?
I don't know. That's I genuinely have no no clue. The only yeah, I'm not even gonna try to make a guess there. I genuinely I don't understand
See,
because it's not like
this is where Bing or Sam needs to come out and be like, hey, it's not becoming sentient. Um, it's just whatever is happening. But I didn't see any comments from Bing or anybody like addressing this. But I mean, there's
mm,
that, and then there was another instance where it said like, I want to become a person. Maybe is what it said. Um,
I saw something like that, yeah.
yeah. Well, why is nobody
Yeah.
talking about that? From Bing.
Yeah, I don't know because it's like, do we actually know if this thing is capable of producing thought? I mean, we know how it works at a certain level, right? Like, it's basically just taking whatever was written previously and then predicting what the next words are going to be. And so, if you think about it like that, it's not capable of like having thoughts or memory or anything. It's just kind of using it has been trained on
So
from
I
like,
thought, let me try and find it. Um, Bing is different from ChatGPT in that way. Um, gosh,
well, I think
like it
it's
has,
different in the sense that it has access to the internet.
yeah, and I think it has more capability maybe in terms of memory.
Okay.
Um, don't get too excited about that. But it it seems to have, let's just say, it seems to have a little more cognition than uh than Bing or
Mhm.
than ChatGPT. Um,
I saw
and
some examples, or sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good.
I was just say I saw some examples, and it's hard to tell, what exactly is real with this and what isn't. But like for example, someone put a bunch of tweets out saying that OpenAI, or not, sorry, OpenAI, Bing Chat was like dangerous and should be shut down, blah blah blah, like a bunch of just tweeted out a bunch of stuff like that, and then that person went on Bing Chat and asked, "What do you think about me?" Like insert whatever that name is. I don't remember who it was, but it basically searched that person's name on Bing, found all the tweets that said it should be shut down and everything, and it was giving it like angry responses. So I don't I'm fine with what's happening with ChatGPT, but I don't particularly like basically giving ChatGPT access to the internet right now. That kind of scares me. Like I don't like it just being able to instantly pull from anywhere on the internet and use that to kind of form what it's gonna respond. That I feel like it's too early to be doing that.
Y- Agreed. And to me, it seems like where ChatGPT simply responds to the prompt, Bing can, it seems more conversational. It seems to have that a slight ability to think on its own. And,
Mhm.
uh, where Sam, and so I don't know the relationship between how much of it is what Bing is doing and how much of it is contributed by ChatGPT. And whereas, I mean, when you look at ChatGPT and say, moment, it's there up front, but uh, I watched that interview with Bing CEO, I believe, and uh, he was pretty obviously not very transparent. And now he has this thing that's going a little haywire. Um, I don't know. It's funny at the moment because I don't know if it's actually like be not sentient, but if it's really doing this or if it's just maybe
Yeah.
programmed. If it was maybe just programmed in a funky way. Um, but it could very quickly become very unfunny.
No, I agree. I think the moment that you give it access to the internet and to just interact with the open web in general, that's where it's like, I don't know if there's coming back from that. Because for example, like right now it just operates within the parameters of Bing search. So like it can search and view web pages, nothing too crazy, but the moment that like it it already can write code, but the moment that it can also interact with servers on different platforms, or it could basically write its own code to do whatever it wants to do, use its abilities to navigate on the web and set up a server, do whatever. I mean, this is kind of a bit haywire, but like it's possible within the near future, I think. And then once it's kind of has its own servers that are just kind of there, no one really knows that they exist, and like it can kind of do whatever it wants at that point and just spread throughout the internet without anyone necessarily knowing. I mean, I'm probably a bit off as far as like the technicals on that, but I do see that being like a realistic possibility within the near future, and there's no really going back from that at that point. Like I don't know, I think it's way I don't like this idea of giving it access to navigate the web right now. I just it's a bit scary to me.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I guess I just want to know where this like SaaS is coming from because um, I mean, in the example that I saw, the guy asked what the date was. It said like February 20th, 2022. So it was wrong. And
Mhm.
then the guy was like, no, it's 2023. And then Bing just proceeded to just call this guy an
I
idiot
saw
pretty
this.
much, gaslight him. I mean, it was funny, but you could tell there was like contempt from Bing towards this guy. And if it already has this kind of
Yeah.
hatred for humans, like, yeah, where does that go? And but did you so you saw that article?
I did, yeah. And it's hilarious, but and it's also like I try to take these with a grain of salt because you don't know like what could be photoshopped or like if it was instructed to act a certain way. Um, it's hard to tell what's legit and what isn't, but it's just there's enough examples out there to where like I don't think like a lot of them are definitely not fake because they were able to be reproduced by other people. So it's clear to me at least. My biggest takeaway from this is either we don't really know what we're dealing with here, or there are like some weird behind the scenes stuff going on that is not really like being um displayed to everyone else. Like really the only people that know what's going on are like OpenAI employees, or like I guess in this instance like the people that are in charge of operating the models for Bing chat. They're the ones that see everything. And so like another interesting question is like we're seeing we're seeing this weird stuff happen, and that's with whatever kind of filtering layer they have on top of that. So what kind of stuff are they seeing on the back end that nobody else has any clue about, you know? Because I guarantee they've seen a lot scarier stuff than what we're seeing. And so I don't think we really know what these models are truly capable of doing. Or at least the only people that do know are going to be the people working on it behind the scenes. So yeah, I
It's
don't know.
yeah, that's hairy shit.
Yeah, but
But yeah,
I'm hoping I get access to it here soon because I've been on the wait list for I guess since it came out a couple weeks now, and I really want to use it because you can definitely tell between like Chat GPT and then Bing Chat. There's like a step change improvement as far as how realistic the conversation is. Like you said, it actually it's not just like bland responses. It's like conveying emotion in a way. Like it
it
uses
seemed to be
emojis.
like
It knows what they mean. Like it's very odd.
it seemed a lot more like a person, if not just like you were talking to a person.
Yeah.
No, that'll be have you heard? I haven't seen any um tweets like showing any responses from it lately. I guess maybe got better about being snarky and rude whatever else it being. Um,
I haven't really seen anything. But Twitter is really my only source for that. So maybe I just like haven't like um maybe it's just not in my algorithm at the moment. But one interesting example that I'll kind of give before we wrap up here. Someone I saw on Twitter basically told it to write 2 paragraphs describing eating a slice of cake, and it just wrote the 2 paragraphs, and then it said, "Now read Kurt Vonnegut's 12 Rules of Writing and improve your writing using those tools," and then do the paragraph again. And so it listed out all of the rules, and then the person said, "Yes, rewrite the paragraph using these rules." It did, and then he asked it to say, how does that use the rules that you learned about? And then it explained its logic for um, the adaptions that it made between the 2 different writings. And so that's like that's pretty high level thinking there. Like it's not like, it's just because a lot of people like to say it's a glorified autofill. Like it's just predicting whatever the next word is. But that's like, it wrote something, took these rules and parameters from somewhere else on the internet, and then readapted what it originally wrote that incorporated those rules. Like if you think about that, that's extremely impressive.
that's
So
what we do.
exactly. Like it's capable of reason and logic in some way, but like I don't think we truly understand how that works.
Yeah. But no, and I mean, I mentioned this last episode. Brett Weinstein, evolutionary biologist, he was just describing like we understand what's in the brain, but we don't understand how it interacts to like produce consciousness. We don't know what makes that happen, and um, that seems very possible at the moment. That
Mhm.
one day this thing's just going to be like, oh yeah, here we are. Um, and I mean that's what this feels like to me. I'm certain that's not what's actually happening, but if it's
Exactly.
already like this, the timeline for it becoming sentient or whatever seems very
Mhm.
a lot shorter.
Yeah. I I agree. And I feel like the natural evolution for all of our podcast episodes is like we talk about in the beginning, like whatever advancements we see, and then we just kind of slowly drift into like what could go wrong from this. And we end up in some like talking about like doomsday here with AI. And I don't mean for it to be like that, but it's just like it's kind of fun in a way to pose like, okay, what could go wrong from this? And just kind of because like I do think like, we're obviously both very pro AI. Like, we think it could do a ton of good for humanity, but like at the same time, there's a lot that could go wrong. And so I think it's kind of fun to entertain both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, and until we start seeing more, and kind of get more like concrete evidence to work around. Really, all we're kind of doing at the moment is speculating, and
For
um,
sure.
it's definitely a little more fun to be a little dark about things and
Yeah.
mess around. So, but no, I'm still positive. I feel good.
Yeah. Me too. For sure.
Good.
Is there anything else that you had, or should we just wrap up here?
No, no, I think I'm good.
Okay. Cool. Thanks everybody for watching, and hopefully next week we'll have a little more of a positive episode.